I'm Sabrina Walsh, 28 years old, and for 2.5 years, I was my brother's unpaid housekeeper, babysitter, tutor, and emotional support system, all while he slept until noon and called it job hunting. My coffee roasting side business had just collapsed. I poured every dollar I had into equipment and beans in a dream that didn't pan out, and I needed somewhere to land while I rebuilt. Moving into my brother's place in Columbus felt like a temporary fix. It turned into a sentence. He had 3 kids. Milo was 11 and quiet in a way that worried me, like he was always waiting for something bad to happen. June was 8 and had this wild, gorgeous energy that nobody around her appreciated. And then there was Owen, 4 years old, still in pull-ups some nights, still needing someone to sit with him until he fell asleep because the dark scared him. Their mother had left 2 years before I moved in. There was a custody arrangement on paper, but in practice my brother was it, and in even more practical terms, I was it. I wasn't supposed to be their caretaker. I was supposed to be the aunt sleeping on the air mattress in the spare room for 3 or 4 months while I found my footing. But the first week I was there, I started driving Milo and June to school because my brother's car had a busted taillight he never got fixed. Then I started packing lunches because I noticed June was throwing away the ones my brother made. Just crackers and string cheese every day. Then Owen's daycare called because nobody had paid the outstanding balance and they were going to drop him from a program. And my brother was asleep, so I put $340 on my credit card and figured he'd pay me back. He did not pay me back. Months went by like that. I picked up part-time work at a specialty grocery store, 25 hours a week at $17 an hour, and I was taking online courses in UX design at night because that was the pivot I'd decided to make. Something I could freelance, something portable, something mine. But the courses kept getting pushed to midnight, then 1 a.m., then not at all. I'd fall asleep over my laptop with Owen's stuffed elephant tucked against my side because he'd climbed in without me noticing. My brother, to his credit, kept telling me I was wonderful. "You're so good with them," he'd say, scrolling his phone while I wiped the stove. "The kids love you. They're so much calmer when you're around." I started to realize those weren't compliments. They were justifications. He was narrating a story in which my presence was natural and necessary and permanent, and slowly I started believing it too. I had a friend from college, Renata, who'd moved to Columbus the same year I did and was building a UX portfolio while picking up freelance contracts. She'd text me links to job postings and say things like, "This is literally made for you," and I'd screenshot them and never reply. I was too tired. By the time I finished making dinner and helping with homework and getting Owen to sleep, I had nothing left. One evening in March, I called Renata from the back porch while everyone else was watching TV inside. I told her I hadn't submitted a single design project in 6 weeks. My professors had started emailing. I had an incomplete in one course that was about to become a permanent fail. She didn't dress it up. "You're disappearing," she said. "I can hear it. You sound like someone who stopped expecting things for themselves." I stood there in the cold with my phone pressed against my face and didn't argue. Then came April. I remember the date because it was the Saturday before tax day, and I was doing my brother's taxes for him, something I'd started doing the previous year and somehow became my job. When he came into the kitchen with his girlfriend, I'll call her Shelby. She'd been around for about 4 months at that point, and I had nothing against her specifically, but there was a version of her I'd started to dread, the one who sat at my brother's kitchen table like she already lived there. Like the whole household was running itself. They sat down across from me. My brother had this look on his face, the careful one he got when he wanted something. "We've been talking," he said. I set down the tax forms. "Shelby's lease is up at the end of May. We want her to move in." He said it like he was giving me good news, like I was going to be happy about having a 4th adult in the house to manage around. "But with another person here, we're going to need you to start contributing to rent. $600 a month. It's only fair." I heard the number, and something went very quiet inside me. $600. My take-home after taxes and my own bills was about $2,200 a month. I was already spending roughly $200 to $300 on things for the kids. School supplies, Owen's pull-ups and nighttime stuff, June's dance recital tights, Milo's lunch money when the account ran low. $600 in rent would leave me under $1,000 a month for everything else. My student loan payments, my phone, gas. And somehow I was also supposed to keep building a design portfolio that could get me out of this situation. "You're already here eating our food," Shelby said. She kept her voice pleasant, like she was just clarifying facts. It makes sense that you'd chip in. I looked at my brother. He didn't look at me. I'm doing the kids' school runs, I said, and helping with homework every night. I packed Owen's lunches all year. I paid his daycare balance when it lapsed in September. I turned to face my brother directly. You never paid me back. He had the decency to look uncomfortable. That's not $600, I said, on top of everything I already do. It's temporary, Shelby said, just until we get settled. I'd heard that word before. I went to bed that night and lay in the dark for a long time. I thought about Milo's face at breakfast, how he'd started asking me, not his dad, if it was going to rain, if the dentist appointment was still on, if I'd remembered to sign his permission slip. I thought about June showing me her drawings and how she folded them carefully before handing them over, like they were precious. I thought about Owen climbing into my lap during any movie, every movie, automatically, like I was furniture in the best possible sense. I also thought about the UX course I was failing, the job posting Renata had sent 3 weeks ago that I hadn't opened, the design portfolio that had 4 projects in it when I moved in and still had 4 projects in it now. I picked up my phone and texted Renata. I need to move out. Help me figure out how. She called me back in under 2 minutes. The next week, I started looking at apartments in Columbus. Studios near the short north were running around $1,100 to $1,300 a month. Manageable if I picked up a few more shifts and stopped hemorrhaging money on things that weren't mine to buy. I had a small amount saved, about $2,800, which would cover a deposit and first month with room to breathe if I was careful. I told no one in the house. I made a spreadsheet on my phone and went over numbers every night after Owen fell asleep. But I had to prepare the kids, at least the older ones. I pulled Milo aside on a Thursday after school. He was sitting at the kitchen table with a math worksheet he kept erasing. I sat down next to him and said, I need to talk to you about something. He stopped erasing. He knew. Kids always know before you say anything. I'm going to be getting my own place, I said. That doesn't mean I'm leaving you guys. It means I'll be a few miles away instead of down the hall. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Is it because of Dad? I didn't lie to him, but I also didn't hand him more than he could hold. I need my own space to work on things, I said. That's real. He picked up his pencil. Okay, he said, which from Milo was not nothing. June cried. She came and found me that same evening, and I don't know how she overheard, but she had, and she had the tears already going when she walked up to me. Are we too much? She asked. Her voice was this small, careful thing. I crouched down to her level and I held her face in my hands. You are never too much, I told her. You're one of my favorite humans. That is not changing. She hugged me hard enough that I nearly lost my balance. Owen was trickier. 4-year-olds don't really understand distance or futures. They understand right now, so I kept it simple. I'm going to have my own apartment soon, but I'm still going to come see you all the time. We'll still do pancakes Saturday sometimes. Nothing changes with us. He thought about it for a moment and then asked if I could bring the apartment dog over when I visited, which was a misunderstanding of the situation, but I said yes. I spent 2 weekends visiting apartments. On the 3rd Saturday in April, I signed a lease on a 1-bedroom in Clintonville, $1,150 a month, 12-month lease, a little kitchen with a window over the sink, walls I could put things on. The landlord had me sign on the hood of his truck in the parking lot because his office printer was broken, and I have never felt more free than I did with that pen in my hand. I didn't tell my brother until I had to. He found out by accident. I left a copy of the lease on the kitchen counter. I'd been reviewing it after dinner and forgot to put it away, and he picked it up and read it. When I walked back in, he was still standing there holding it. You found an apartment, he said. Yes, without talking to us. I didn't think I needed to. He set the papers down. The kids need you here, Sabrina. The kids need their parent here, I said. I'm their aunt. His face shifted. I'd never said it that plainly before. Shelby was in the living room. She didn't come in, but I could tell she was listening. You're seriously going to do this, he said. Not a question. My move-in date is May 14th, I said. He left the room. I went back to my laptop. The next 10 days were cold in that house. My brother spoke to me in logistics only, whose turn it was to drive, what time Milo's soccer ended, whether we were out of Owen's pull-ups. Shelby was pleasant in a way that felt like punishment. all smiles and thank yous that had ice underneath them. I kept my head down and I kept packing. The night before my move, I taught Milo how to do a basic grocery run, how to check the fridge before you leave, how to compare unit prices, how to make sure Owen's pull-up size was on the list. He wrote everything in a notebook I bought him. He rolled his eyes twice, but he wrote it down. I showed him how to heat up soup without burning it. I showed June how to check Milo's math homework using the answer key method. Work backwards, see where it breaks down. She nodded very seriously and asked good questions. Owen fell asleep on my lap that last night. I sat there a long time before I moved him. Move-in day was a Tuesday. I borrowed Renata's car and made 3 trips. By 4 p.m., I had a mattress on the floor, my laptop on a folding table, and a coffee maker plugged in on the counter. I sat on the floor and ate a sandwich and felt for the first time in a long time like I could breathe all the way to the bottom of my lungs. Then my brother called me on a Sunday morning 9 days later. His voice was flat and strange. "A police officer is going to be contacting you," he said. "I filed a report." I sat up in bed. "I'm sorry, what?" "My TV is gone. Some cash I had in the drawer is missing. Shelby's laptop charger." The floor dropped out from under me. "You think I took those things? You were the last one in the house before we left for my in-laws that weekend." I held the phone and felt something cold move through my chest. "I didn't take anything from your house. I moved out my own things, nothing else. You can come look at my apartment right now if you want." He hung up. An hour later, I got a call from a Detective Osei with the Columbus Police Department. He was professional and calm and explained that a report had been filed and he needed to ask me some questions. I answered everything. I told him my move-out date, my move-in date, what I took. I offered him my address. I told him Renata had helped me move and could account for what I brought over. He asked if I'd be willing to let them verify. I said absolutely. While I waited, I called Renata, and I was not calm on that phone call. She talked me down. "He's panicking because you actually left," she said. "This is what losing control looks like." The next morning, Detective Osei called again. He'd spoken to Renata, who confirmed what I'd described. He'd also apparently gone back to my brother's house and done some looking around. The TV, it turned out, was in the garage. My brother had moved it before the weekend trip and forgotten. The cash, according to Shelby's own account, when pressed, she'd used for gas and meant to replace. The charger had been found behind the couch. He told me the report had been closed. He also told me, in a tone that was careful and measured, that filing a false report was something people should be thoughtful about before doing. I sat in my little apartment and I let myself shake for a while. Then I texted Milo to check in. He texted back, "I know what Dad did. I'm sorry." I stared at that for a long time. He was 11 years old and he was apologizing for his father. Something about that broke me open and put me back together at the same time. I wrote back, "You have nothing to be sorry for. You're a good kid. How's the soup situation going?" He sent back 3 laughing emojis and then, "June burned it yesterday. I fixed it." I laughed out loud alone in my apartment. Actual laughing. 2 weeks later, Renata called me with a contact. A friend of hers who ran a small but growing e-commerce brand and needed a UX redesign for their checkout flow. It wasn't glamorous, but the project paid $800, and it was real work, something I could put in my portfolio. I stayed up until 2 a.m. on the first night, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. That was a difference I hadn't felt in a long time. I went back to my courses. I emailed my professor about the incomplete, and she let me resubmit the project with a 1-letter grade penalty, which I accepted gratefully. I submitted something I was proud of. Then things at my brother's house started unraveling in ways I couldn't ignore. Mila texted me that Shelby had moved into the spare room, but things were weird. June called me crying one Thursday afternoon because she'd been sick and nobody had picked her up from school. She'd had to wait in the nurse's office for 2 hours. I called the school to apologize on behalf of whoever was supposed to come. And then I sat with the guilt of being 20 minutes away and not being allowed, by my own boundaries, to fix it. I talked to Renata about it. She didn't tell me what to do. She just asked, "What do you owe those kids, and what do you owe yourself?" I thought about it for a week. What I decided was this. I would not go back to living there. But I would not disappear either. I set up a standing Sunday morning video call with all 3 kids. Milo's idea, actually, he'd asked if we could. I told my brother that I'd take the kids on alternate Saturdays if he arranged drop-off and pick-up. He said yes, probably because it solved a problem for him, but I didn't care about his reasons. I also called the kids' school and made sure I was still listed as an emergency contact. When I mentioned that to my brother, he didn't object. That small thing mattered more to me than I expected. The Sunday calls became the best part of my week. Owen would bring whatever he was currently obsessed with to the camera. A dinosaur, a rock he found, a drawing of what I think was a horse but he said was a wolf. June would show me her art. Milo would have a question about something, sometimes homework, sometimes life. Is it normal to feel nervous before you say something true? We talked about that one for a while. My brother and I didn't talk much beyond logistics. Shelby apparently moved back out after 2 months. June told me matter-of-factly, the way kids report facts, without editorial. My brother called me once in July and asked if I could help out more. I told him I helped out every Saturday and I was their aunt and that I loved them and that wasn't the same as being available full-time. He was quiet and then he said, "Okay." I don't know what he meant by okay, but I let it stand. By September, I had 6 clients. Nothing massive, mostly small businesses and one nonprofit that needed a whole brand identity refresh. I charged $65 an hour, which felt like an impossible number when I said it out loud the first time, and clients paid it. I quit the grocery store in October. I cried a little on my last shift, which embarrassed me. But one of my coworkers hugged me and said, "Go do your thing," and that helped. I kept my apartment. I bought a paper desk and a decent monitor and a plant I named something stupid that I won't repeat here. I made my apartment a place where I could think. The walls had my mood boards on them, color palettes, typography samples, a printed out photo of June's drawing labeled Best Work Reference. Milo started texting me questions about what it was like to run your own thing. Not what the process was exactly, more like, did you know it was going to work? Did you ever feel like it was stupid to try? I answered honestly, no, I didn't know. And yes, I felt that all the time. But I also told him what I learned about starting from nothing. That you can be methodical about it. You can break the overwhelming thing into smaller things, and the smaller things are doable. He texted back, "Okay, that actually helps." He's 12 now. June turned 9 in August, and I brought her a sketchbook with 200 pages because she'd filled the last one in 3 months. Owen is 5 and tells everyone he has 2 houses, which isn't technically accurate, but I don't correct him. I'm not rich. I'm not where I imagined I'd be at 28 when I was 22 and full of plans. But I have a life that's mine. In a way, it stopped being for 2.5 years, and I can feel the difference in my chest every morning when I make coffee in my own kitchen and decide what the day is going to be. My brother never apologized for the police report. I'm not sure he ever will. There's a version of me that's still angry about it, and I think that version is allowed to stay. But she's not running things anymore. What I know is this. The people who need you will sometimes try to own you, and sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and for them, is to refuse. I wasn't their mother. I was never supposed to be. And the moment I stopped pretending otherwise, everything that was supposed to be mine finally had somewhere to land. I've thought a lot about what actually happened in those 2.5 years, not the surface version, the one where I was just helping out family and things got complicated, but the real version underneath that. The truth is I let it happen slowly enough that I never felt the exact moment it became too much. That's how these things work. Nobody asks you to give up your whole life on a Tuesday afternoon. They just ask for one more thing and then one more, and one day you look up and your design portfolio hasn't changed in 8 months. And a 4-year-old has started calling you by a name that sounds a lot like a parent's name. And you realize you forgot to apply for that job posting your best friend sent you 3 weeks ago. What I know now, looking back, is that my brother was not a villain. He was just someone who found a solution to his problem and stopped looking for a better one. That's its own kind of failure. But it's a quieter one. The real thing I had to reckon with was my own part in it. Why I kept saying yes. Why I kept absorbing the cost. Why it took being handed a rent bill to finally make me move. I think about Renata telling me I sounded like someone who stopped expecting things for themselves. And I think she was right, and I think I'd let that happen because somewhere along the way I decided that being needed was close enough to mattering. It isn't. Those are different things, and confusing them will cost you years if you let it. The police report was the clarifying moment. Not because it was the worst thing that happened. It wasn't. But because it showed me exactly what I'd been working with all along. When I stopped being useful, I became a threat to manage. That's a hard thing to see about someone you love. Milo saw it too, which is why he texted me to say sorry for something his father did. He's 11 years old, and he already understood cause and effect better than the adults around him. Kids who grow up in chaos often do. They pay attention because they have to. I hope he carries that intelligence forward, not the weight that comes with it. What I believe, not as any grand philosophy, but just as something I've watched play out in my own life, is that the way you treat people accumulates. It doesn't always come back fast or obviously. But Renata showed up with her car on my move-in day because I'd shown up for her when her lease fell through 2 years before. Detective OC closed that report because I told him the truth, and I had someone who could confirm it. My clients found me because I finally had the stillness and the space to do work I was proud of. None of that happened despite me leaving. It happened because I left. June fills sketchbooks now. Milo asks real questions. Owen thinks he has 2 houses. And honestly, in the way that matters, maybe he does. I didn't abandon those kids. I just stopped pretending I was their mother, which freed me to actually be their aunt. Reliably, with energy, with presence that wasn't depleted before I walked through the door. That's what I tell anyone in a version of what I was living. The people you love don't need the hollowed-out version of you. They need the real one. And the real one can only exist if you protect her.